What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and beautiful people of the Crasher community? How are you guys doing today? We're back with a new video on the channel. Thank you very much for tuning on in, you absolute legends. And ladies and gentlemen, it would appear that we return to the topic once again revolving around Nintendo. And as someone who grew up literally playing Nintendo games for most of his life, having to talk about Nintendo in this way is not exactly what I would call an easy endeavor. In fact, I am very, very disappointed in Nintendo on many fronts. One such example would be this whole thing with this Palworld lawsuit over patents. And patents, I may add, that are very broad and vague and can be applicable in many ways in many other games. And this video here originates from this topic. Nintendo is willing to brick Switch 2 consoles to tackle piracy. Now, if you guys don't know what brick means, it essentially means that your console is rendered completely and utterly useless. Nintendo has made some major changes to its account user agreement and privacy policy in an attempt to stop Switch 2 piracy. Nintendo has never been shy when it comes to protecting its intellectual property. Last year, the video game company made headlines after shutting down several high-profile emulators which enabled players to run Switch games on their PCs. More recently, Nintendo issued a lawsuit against a third-party accessory manufacturer after they leaked unofficial mock-ups and renderings of the Nintendo Switch 2. The Pokemon-inspired game Palworld is also tied up in an ongoing legal battle and has been forced to make changes to its game. However, Nintendo has outlined a new method that it hopes will stop Switch 2 piracy dead in its tracks. Now, before we go any further here, let me clear this up in case there may be any misunderstanding here. I do not have a problem when it comes to taking actions against piracy. But as we go deeper into this, piracy is not the only motivation, let's just say. Let's just say that piracy is not the only thing that is being targeted here. And this is where I start to have some pretty heavy disagreements here when it comes to this subject. As discovered by GameFile's Stefan Totilo, Nintendo will be able to brick Switch 2 systems that bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with their games and services. As of May 8th, Nintendo has started rolling out emails to all Nintendo account users, which now come with some amendments to its user agreement policy. The full update can be found below. Without limitation, you agree that you may not A. Publish, copy, modify, reverse engineer, lease, rent, decompile, disassemble, distribute, offer for sale, or create derivative works of any portion of the Nintendo account services. B. Bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo account services, including through the use of any hardware or software that would cause the Nintendo account services to operate other than in accordance with its documentation and intended use. C. Obtain, install, or use any unauthorized copies of Nintendo account services, or D. Exploit the Nintendo account services in any manner other than to use them in accordance with the applicable documentation and intended use, in each case without Nintendo's written consent or expressed authorization, or unless otherwise expressly permitted by applicable law. You acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions Nintendo may render, the Nintendo account services and or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part. And this right here is where we start to turn things in the direction of disagreement. Now, it would be one thing if you were pirating video games. Yeah, that right there, like, 100% I would be in agreements and understanding for when it comes to that person having their console bricked. But say if you are doing things that are a lot less harmful, and by a lot, I'm talking a lot less harmful. So say if you are running firmware and emulators, things that are not going to outright cause harm in any way, shape, and form. Imagine if you end up having your console bricked because of that. Like, should that even be allowed when it comes to Nintendo? Should they be allowed to take something that you spent a few $100s on, maybe even several hundred, depending on your currency, and they utterly destroy it. They make it completely useless, and that money that you spent on that now bricked system is flushed down the pisser. Tell me how you would feel about that. Like, unless you are using things in a way to harm something or someone that relates to the Nintendo product, I really don't think that straight up bricking your system, bricking your device, is the way to go. Like, this right here is just way over the line. But let me tell you this isn't the only part of this thing that I want to talk about here, because there's another part that has me equally as furious. So what we have here is the Nintendo Switch 2 user agreement. Now, if we go ahead and scroll down a fair ways here, we have ourselves a really big standout here, and that would be in Section 7, Dispute Resolution, Binding Individual Arbitration, Class Action Waiver. Please read this section carefully, because it requires you and Nintendo to arbitrate certain disputes and claims and limits the manner in which you and Nintendo can seek relief from each other. This arbitration provision precludes you and Nintendo from suing in court, having a trial by jury, or participating in a class action lawsuit. You and Nintendo agree that arbitration will be solely on an individual basis and not as a class arbitration, class action, or any kind of representative proceeding. You and Nintendo are each waiving the right to trial by a jury. So what does that mean, you guys are probably asking? Well, that means two very, very big things that is essentially the double bird to us, and in complete and utter favor of Nintendo. Number one, you are unable to have a class action lawsuit for whatever reason when it comes to Nintendo. Everything has to be an individualized and case-by-case basis. And number two, well, if you were to try and pursue Nintendo legally, you would have to be playing in their home turf, which means that you essentially are putting yourself in a lose-lose situation, and Lord only knows how much money you would be losing in this lawsuit. So essentially what that means is that if you were to find something legally pursuable against Nintendo, you would have to be at their mercy and go right straight to them. And let's be honest here, when it comes to the history of Nintendo, let's just say good luck with that one. Like, that right there should be a big time red flag to any unassuming viewer that comes across this video, because if you have a company that has this type of stipulation, this class action waiver, like, what does that tell you? It just absolutely makes me sick beyond description that companies like these can get away with this bullshit. Like, Nintendo isn't exactly doing favors for their reputation when it comes to shit like this. I mean, let's take a look at this whole thing with their legal battle with Palworld based on patent infringements. And also, I was actually meaning to talk about this in a separate video, but let's just say that outside influences, aka life, kind of stonewalled me from doing so. But let me just say this, I think it's absolutely fucking egregious that Nintendo thinks that they can get away with overpricing their video games. Like, imagine having to spend upwards of at least $80 on a freaking Nintendo game. I mean, to call it egregious would honestly be an understatement. And now we have ourselves this change right here, this class action waiver, making it so that Nintendo gains even more power over their fans that they absolutely don't respect. And, you know, just makes me wonder, like, how much longer can we put up with this? Like, if it wasn't for the fact that I was putting out Pokemon content on my main channel, I would not be supporting Nintendo in any way, because they demonstrate that they don't care about anything at all, except if it means lining their pockets with money. And I don't like saying these things here, but this is how I feel, and why I don't like saying these things is because I grew up a lover of Nintendo games, so to speak out against Nintendo when it comes to these subjects here, it's not exactly easy when it comes to all this, you know? Like, I really, really wish that Nintendo was just better, you know? Like, I wish that they treated their fans better. But with that being said, though, guys, these right here are just my own opinions and observations based on the subject presented. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with my takes? Do you guys disagree with my takes? And what are your guys' thoughts overall when it comes to what we talked about here in this video? Whatever your thoughts and opinions happen to be, ladies and gentlemen, I always love to hear back from you amazing legends in the comments down below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and have yourself a good day. Take care.